Hi guys and welcome to my latest video. Now what we have here today is xDuoo, I hope it's pronounced like that, TA-05. And as you can see here it says tube headphone amplifier, but actually it is a hybrid amplifier. What that means is that it has these tubes in preamp section, but it has class A solid state amplifier as a buffer in amplifier section. And that's an interesting combo, but we'll talk a little bit later about how it sounds actually. For now, I'll just quickly go through some features, build and so on. So as you can see in the front, it's quite simple really. We have headphone jack, it's the big one, 6.35 millimeters, but of course you get the adapter in the box. And there's switch. This is source switch, auxiliary 1 or auxiliary 2, and volume knob. On the back, only power input, power switch, and two set of RCA analog inputs, and that's why we have switch in the front to choose between set 1 or set 2. This basically means you can attach two sources to it. And I'll quickly power it up. And when you do that, you need to wait few seconds for tubes to warm up. And when that happens, you will actually hear, I'm waiting for it, here it is. I hope you heard that. You will hear click. And the click means that they're ready to be used. Before that, your headphones are not actually connected to the output. And that delayed start also means when you power it on with your headphones on, you will not hear any loud pop or anything like that. A few seconds later, the relay clicks, you get the sound, but no nasty pops or anything like that. And just before I move to sound section, I'll just mention a few more things. First of them, volume knob. It feels so good and so smooth, one of the best and smoothest ever. You can operate it with one finger basically, which I often do. And this amp offers a lot of power and a lot of gain. So be careful if you attach some sensitive headphones, like for example in-ears or something like that. You should be like in a really low region. Don't go immediately like wow here, because it will blow your ears. Something like this is reserved for really demanding like low sensitivity headphones. It like kicks with a lot of power quite early. And that said, there are a few things that you have to be aware of. First of all, I tried it with several sensitive in-ears and I didn't notice any significant background hiss or buzz or anything like that. But it is a little bit inconvenient when it comes to setting correct volume, because you are doing like these movements, because this has a lot of power and gain. But it works. You don't have any sort of nasty background hiss. The thing that I want you to be aware of, this unit is quite sensitive to noise, to electromagnetic noise from air, from other devices around it. And just one example of that is when I listen to it and I just take my phone and I don't have to do anything. I just put it close and turn on the screen. I hear noise and crackling in the signal. I turn it off, wait for like a second or two, it goes away. So basically any electromagnetic interference close to it will be heard. So I don't know, most of you probably don't have anything to worry about, but if you feel that your desktop is cluttered with some sort of wireless devices or cables going everywhere and making like noisy electric environment, you might have some sort of problem with buzzing. And that's basically a tube thing really, because tubes are much more sensitive to things like that than solid state components. Okay, now that everything else is out of the way, how does it actually sound? And I'll start from the sound signature, which is, as you'd expect from a tube amp, quite warm and lush and rich in mid-range. And I'll elaborate a little bit more, but if you expect tubes to give you that sort of fullness and warmness, you'll definitely get it with this. So I started listening to this one in isolation, and I noticed first of all bass line has a lot of weight behind it. It's bold, it's nice, and luckily it's not overly warm, it's not overly bloated. There is a little bit of bloom, especially in the mid-bass region, that's like upper bass, but that's happening just a little bit. And that's actually one of the things that is giving mid-range some sort of extra boldness, some sort of extra oomph that a lot of people really like. But you can still hear bass notes hitting as they should. You still hear very decent amount of texture, decent amount of agility and speed coming from it. And of course it cannot match fast solid state amplifier, but it is good. And going to higher regions, everything feels quite well balanced, you know. Mid-range is present, vocals sound really rich, and this sort of boldness that I mentioned earlier coming from below helps that. It makes vocals sound really present and lush and big. And that's quite nice. And higher frequencies are again on the warmer side slightly. Basically, you hear a lot of details. I never feel that anything is missing when there are cymbals, things like that, instruments. I feel I hear everything, all of the details are there, but they're slightly warmer and slightly more laid back than your typical solid state amp, like Topping L30 here, for example. And when you put all of these traits together, what you get is, as I explained, sound on the warmer side, really lush sound that has a lot of boldness to vocals and to mid-range. It's slightly rolled off, slightly laid back in the higher frequencies, but it sounds dynamic, it sounds open enough, and soundstage is not cramped, it's again big enough, it feels like it has dimensionality to it. There's meat to tones, and there's enough layering, enough separation. And as I mentioned before, this is quite powerful amp. And that's actually great because it's lending liveliness to everything. You know, no matter what headphones you have, this will have no problem driving them, and driving them with some real boogie to it, with some liveliness to the sound. So when you actually mix this warmer and juicier type of sound with enough power, with pretty decent kick, pretty decent liveliness to the overall presentation, you get something that's really addictive to listen to. You know, it's nice, it's bold, and it's fun. And basically something that I easily just kept listening, like, oh, one more song, one more song, one more song, and keep forgetting that I'm testing anything. I was just enjoying the music, you know, and that's always a great sign. But then I went on and compared it directly to Topping L30 here that I recently reviewed, and I really liked it. It's a really nice amp. It's fairly neutral. It's a little bit on the leaner side of things, on the analytical side of things, very precise amp. And you immediately notice how different approaches these two have. So with this one, as I mentioned, everything sounds big, bold, and it's just flowy. It's just fluid-like, very musical. And with this one, everything sounds very precise. You definitely hear that bass line is more precise. It starts quicker, it stops quicker. So if you're listening some really fast tracks with really fast bass line, fast rhythm section, this one will probably be better. When it comes to vocals, this one's makes... And the same goes for bass texture, really. So I was listening to this trio, and this song that I'll put on screen here, I really love it. And I was going back and forth, and each of these showcased their qualities. So instruments sounded so rich, smooth, and bold through this one. But then I played through L30, and I realized that I hear more texture. And if I focus on double bass, for example, I hear that it's like drier through L30, but you hear more of its texture. You're more aware that it's a note made by a string, while here it just sounds fuller, more fluid, but it has a feeling a little bit of being like covered in chocolate, in caramel, in something like that. You lose some of that texture and some of that awareness that it's created by string. And same go for other instruments and vocals too. You always get some additional warmth and some additional juice and sweetness with this one. It always sounds drier through this one, but with a better sense of texture. And when it comes to highest frequencies, this one is more extended. So in some songs you barely notice that, because this one is good enough. In isolation, I never thought of this one to sound too dark or too close. There's quite enough high frequencies here. But compare them directly and you'll notice that L30 recreates airier sound, because spatial cues from recordings like microphone noise or some background noise from the room, some really small echoes coming from recording studios, that's something that we usually call air, and that's something that L30 conveys better. Now, all of that said, I'm really struggling to choose which one I prefer. And I am making this review now and I'm still not sure. Simply each of these have their own qualities. And I think that's basically where the answer is hidden, is what is your main focus on when you're listening to the music? And this comparison may sound creepy to you, but if these two amps were girls, this one would be the athletic kind, you know, the muscly kind. And this one would be the curvy kind. And having this kind of athletic, really healthy, really low-fat body is great. And every doctor will tell you that's the way to go, that's the healthiest way to live your life. But on the other hand, having these type of curves, especially when they're done in moderation and strategically placed, can also be a really beautiful thing, right? So it comes to personal preferences, you know. Are you for like fat-free, gymnastic, athletic type of thing, or you're maybe more for a little bit of curves in a tasteful manner? As I said, this comparison is a little bit creepy, but it just reminded me of that. Because, you know, this is technically correct way. And this is adding a little bit of sauce, spicing things up a little bit. And that would basically be it. This is quite lively sounding amplifier. It has a lot of power and it doesn't have problem driving basically anything that I tried with it. So that's great, because when we talk about dynamic, about drive, that's all really great. When we talk about sound signature, it's warmer, it's on the lusher, bolder type of things. So if you think you might like that, I have no trouble recommending this one. Because it does everything else great, it's just the thing, do you like that tubey type of sound? And for me at least, I really like it. And as I mentioned, sometimes I even preferred it to this one. Sometimes I preferred this one. It depends on the song and my mood, my like listening mood that day. But I think it would pair especially well with leaner sounding gear, like leaner sounding headphones, or headphones that have that peak going on in higher regions, like so many models on the market actually do. For example, a lot of AKGs or Beyerdynamics have that treble peak, and they can sound a little bit tiring if paired with something like this. Maybe you like that, maybe you like that high frequency focus it gives you, you know, like sharp analytical thing going on. But if you're not feeling that way, maybe you should give a try with something like this. So that would be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching this video. And if I sounded a little bit off today, I'm sorry, that's because I have some sort of flu these days. And if you like the video anyway, please click like button and share it with your friends. That would really help the channel spread and grow and bring even more interesting reviews.